welcome to the Kenney Show. This is the place where we take a no bullshit look at life's little lessons. Here, together, we find the spiritual glory in even the most wicked hard story. This is a journey from fear back to love and how we can find our greatest strength and happiness in some of the most unlikely places. I believe that if you're willing to change your mind, you can totally change your life. So, are you ready to rewrite your story and choose to live free? Let's do this. Hey, you guys, and welcome to the Kenney Show. Oh my God. I don't even know what number episode this is going to be. It might be 54. It might be, but I'm not sure. But I'm so excited. You can see, you guys have no idea. Okay, so here's the thing. I only have people on my show who I love, who are like, I'm kind of selfish. Like I have my friends on, I have people I love on, and it's got to be somebody who, because I know a lot of people, but people who are doing things in the world that really excite me, that I think is for the betterment of the planet and the universe, who I think are truly, genuinely like living their calling. Like they got the divine instruction, they picked up the phone, said yes, and they're running with it. So you guys, I'm wicked excited today. Sarah Wilson, I could describe her a lot of ways. I could describe her like one of the geniuses behind My Smart Puppy. She's a dog expert. Some people would say she's a wicked, fancy, smart dog trainer. She's been on a bunch of famous shows and stuff like that. But I'll let her, like, you know, flush it out. But I'm going to read her short bio just to be a little professional, okay? So here's what Sarah has to say. So dogs have been teaching me for over 30 years. Working with animals is a daily lens focused on how I see the world, how I deal with mistakes, what I tell myself about both successes and failures. So good, you guys. 9 books have my name as author or co-author. I've appeared on PBS, ABC, CBS, Fox, in many, many publications. She's worked with also many famous people, the dogs they care about. And let's see, the dogs simply want to know if I can help them make sense of the world they are in, and I strive to do that better and better. Look at, I just told Sarah, I just totally lied, because I told Sarah I'm going to let her talk and introduce herself for a second, but I'm going to let her say hi quickly, because I want to dive right into that last sentence there. And I have so much love for my guest. You guys, welcome Sarah Wilson to the show.
I am so happy to be here, because it's rare that I get a chance to really talk about the big passion in my life, communicating with other species that are on the planet with us. And I know you're such a passionate animal lover, and we've known each other so long through the animals, that I am thrilled and honored to get a chance to really get into this with you in a way that I don't get a chance to talk about it. People always like, your dog training, it's about behavior. I'm like, no, it's about relationship. Yes. Behavior can lead us to relationship, but behavior without relationship is no fun. That's not why we got dogs.
Oh my God. You guys, you can already hear why I love Sarah, okay? So I'm going to just give you guys a little peek into how we met, why she's been such an important part of our lives, and the role that she's played for us and our animals. And so my sweetie and I had we rescued this little dog, and we, you know, it was like adopted unseen. Like so many of our animals came into our life, we didn't meet them first. We just said, yeah, we'll take a shot on them. Like, let's see what happens. And we weren't even looking for Buckminster Biscuits. We weren't looking for Bucky at all. We were actually looking to adopt a cat.
He was looking for you, though. He needed you.
We were looking for a cat, and we found this cat randomly somewhere in Alabama who was actually on a dog rescue site. They were listing this cat that like wandered out of the woods, who is Toby Pajamas. You guys all know Toby Pajamas. So right underneath Toby Pajamas' picture was Buck. And we were like, oh my God, he's not even much bigger than like a can of dog food. Like, it was so crazy. So he comes up here, we get him. And originally he was meant to be like my sweetie's dog. I already had Abby, my beloved border collie. Abby was the kind of dog, you guys, like I could literally say to her, Abby, go get a drink of water. And she would get up and she'd walk over and she'd get a drink of water and then she'd come back. Like
Well, she thought, why are you asking me such basic questions?
I know. She was so smart. She was the love of my life. I'm like, oh, I still get emotional when I think about her. But so this was supposed to be his dog, right? The second that Buck and I met each other, though, on the day of transport, you know, we picked him up at the people's house and he was just all in on mom. He was like, that's it. This is my person, my poor sweetie. And so Buck was like a little afraid of my sweetie. He was pissing all over the house. He was like doing all these crazy behaviors and we didn't know what to do. We asked a lot of different people for advice. We hired a dog trainer, a local dog trainer who came over and assessed the situation, gave us homework. Nothing was getting better. And finally, I broke down like to my vet, who I love, Dr. Jim McKiernan.
Oh, Jim, I miss Jim.
I know, I love it. So Dr. Jim's been
He's
my
fine,
vet.
by the way. I'm just somewhere else.
No, he's not.
Jim's fine.
Yeah, he's not dead. Sarah just moved. So Dr. Jim, Great Bay Animal Hospital in Durham, he's been my vet for like 20 years. And he said, we were at our wit's end. We're like, I don't know if we can keep this dog. Like, I don't know what to do. And I understood very quickly, I will say this, it wasn't that I necessarily had a dog problem. It's that Buck had a person problem. I couldn't understand what he needed. Like he was like using a language that I didn't quite get. And I've had dogs my whole life. I've worked at kennels. At one point I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian. So I've been around a lot of animals. So I was just at my wit's end and I was just crying because I came to love this little dog and he was my first little dog. I'd never had a little dog before, you know, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And Dr. Jim said, before you give up, there's one more person I want you to talk to. And he said, let me get you in touch with Sarah Wilson. She's a dear friend of mine. He spoke so highly of her. He said, if anybody can help you, it's Sarah. And he says she knows how to deal with or help with what are called deficit dogs. I'd never heard the term before. I called Sarah, and I'm going to let Sarah talk a little bit about, first of all, because I'm being rude right now, but I'm going to let Sarah talk a little bit about what that means to be a deficit dog. And then maybe you can share from your point of view how you helped with Buck, and then I can talk about what a miracle it was for me. So go ahead.
So deficit dog is actually a term I coined.
Oh, it is your term. So
yeah,
okay, perfect.
And deficits are animals who didn't get socialization during the critical periods. They just got no socialization. Previous to the term, we thought of them as shy, but they may not be genetically shy. What I consider them to be is in free fall. They don't know how to connect with people. They never developed a bond at times. And he was so stressed about being handled, about being touched. He just, as far as he's concerned, he was beamed up by friendly aliens. And if you can imagine, right, all of a sudden you end up in a friendly alien's house. The aliens are 30 times your size. They're trying to interact with you. You've got no idea what to do. And everything you choose to do is often told as wrong by other people. You didn't do that. So they start to get more and more confused and more stressed. And then they start peeing everywhere and being weird because they don't know how to help themselves. Dogs are very much like people that once they have an answer, like once they think the answer is to be frightened, they will never stop being frightened until we show them another way, at which point they go, oh, this is so much better, but I didn't know I could do this. So what I do is I really focus on what behaviors can I help him do that will make him feel more confident. I used to try to change their mind and then their behavior would change, but that takes forever. With dogs, behavior and emotions are linked. They're like babies, they're congruent. He cannot behave more confidently without feeling more confident. So I gave you exercises to do that would help him learn to feel more confident. And as he started to feel more confident, deficits are always thrilled to have a better idea. So he started going, wow, this feels better. And you guys started to connect, and then it all snowballed in the right direction.
Yeah, so she makes it sound really like professional and this is what she did. And it was, to me, it was literally like watching a miracle unfold. You guys, I had this little, and like I said, I wasn't like new to dogs. I knew how to teach dogs how to sit, stay, come, like do some basic stuff, you know. I just couldn't get Buck to do anything. And even to this day, he still is, I wouldn't say he's cured. Buck is
Oh no.
so sensitive. Like he's always going to be a little bit deficit. And
Yeah, he is.
and now that he's 13 and he's starting to tip a little into what we saw with Abby, which I kind of called, you know, I'm not saying I'm the only one who says this, but he's getting a little bit of the doggy dementia. When Buck gets stressed, he gets these extra wrinkles around his eyes and his eyes bug out. Yeah, he does that a lot now. And he's over excessively panting. He's always been a little weird, Buck, but he is the miracle, you guys. So we're like, Sarah, I don't know what to do. He's afraid of my sweet. He won't do this. He won't do this. I can't help him. I'm so, you know, and then I was becoming stressed, which doesn't help the situation, obviously. Sarah literally came in the house, you guys, within 5 minutes. She like meets Buck, she watches him a little bit, assesses the situation, puts the lead on him, like, Buck, sit. And now at first he wouldn't do it. And then she turned to me and she said, as a person who has the lifelong assignment of becoming more patient, one of the most powerful things that Sarah taught me as a human being, not even regardless of what the subject was, dog or otherwise, she looked at me and she said, I've asked him to do this and he will do it. Not in a forceful way. She said, and he will do it. And I don't care how long it takes him. And I was like, wait, what? There was no forcing. There was no clicking. There was no like yanking. And she was just like, I'm going to show him that there is a better way. And within 5 minutes, she was like, Buck, you know, sit. And he sat and I was like, come on, like my mind was blown. Then by the time she left, she had taught him to sit, to down, to come, to like take a treat. I was like, I can't even believe it. And then because he was a deficit dog, I thought this was so fascinating. She actually gave me homework. Here's one of the things I love about Sarah. It's kind of like how I feel about yoga students. I don't just say, these are the postures, force yourself into what exists.
Right.
It's like, I'm going to deal with who's actually in front of me. So you gave us, and you probably remember, but if you don't, I'll refresh your memory, but I'm going to let you gave us kind of unique homework with Buck. And do you remember what that was?
Well, a lot of attachment exercises is normally what I do. Yeah. And where trainers, if the dog's attached, then you can leverage that relationship to get them to want to be more connected. But if the dog's not attached, if you try to, you know, make them work for what they love, he's just like, I don't love anything enough. I don't get it. I have no idea what you're talking about. So first you have to get the attachment. So lots of lap time and lovey time and sleep on you. Yep.
Yeah. So you were like, look, I normally wouldn't say this, but I want him to become more attached to you. So you can hold him, you can like let him sleep with you, like you can let him do these things. And then the caveat was, because we had other animals in the house, and you called it something so funny, and I wish I could remember what it was.
Well, tell me what it is, and my guess is I might remember.
And I even think it wasn't dirty, but you said if he starts to behave like possessive of you or growl at the other animals, but you called it something in particular, and it was so funny. Like he was being like, mine. Like,
yeah, resource guarding you. You're his resource. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's still, like I said, you guys, he's come so far. He still is now. He's like, when Quincy came, and this is the other thing, and we can talk about this in a little bit. As soon as we brought another dog in, though, once Abby, like Quincy came in and then Abby died, and then it literally became like a pissing match between those two. So like, this is one of the things I think people sometimes don't think about is that, you know, especially with a dog like Buck, I was like his sun and moon, right? So like the tides like flowed based on like where I'm still his son. To this day, when I walk in a room, he becomes a different dog. He's like, oh my God, she's here, right? He's always still been that way. But when Buck is so sensitive to his environment, the slightest change in whatever it is, he kind of is like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And I can relate to that. I have a really sensitive nervous system. So I kind of look at Buck and I'm like, oh my God, in so many ways, he's a reflection of me.
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's taught me so much, and we couldn't have done it without your help. And then when we brought in Quincy, and then we brought in the 2 wild
The
squirrels.
peanuts. Thing 1 and thing 2.
Oh my God. That was a no. But you guys, what I'm trying to say is Sarah literally saved us and saved our animals. If it wasn't for her, I don't know what we would have done, because it can be so overwhelming when you're adopting a dog sight unseen. And I'm not saying you would even say that that's a good idea, but we were just rescuing from the south.
Not?
So we brought him up, and then it was like, okay, it's like Cracker Jack box. What are you going to get? Like, what's in here with the caramelly corn stuff?
Yeah.
And we would just be like, holy shit. And Sarah has never let us down. She is so smart. And so I guess I want to talk to you about that. Like, how did you become a dog expert? Like, how did that revolution or evolution from childhood to, like, what happened?
Oh, well, first of all, the more you listen to the animals, the more they will teach you. There's a saying in dogs, it may come from horses, that if you want to have opinions about dogs, talk to people. If you want to know the facts, talk to the dogs.
I love that. I love that.
So I was born loving animals, and I got into riding horses when I was 6 or 7, and that went on, and had my own horse, did a lot of that work, learned a lot. Horses will teach you a lot. And then was working with dogs. When I was in my 20s, I was actually working in an art gallery on 5th Avenue and 57th in Manhattan, right across from Trump Tower. And I ruptured my appendix and didn't know it. And I almost died, gangrene, peritonitis, the whole thing.
Oh my God.
And when I survived it, I thought, I should really be doing what I'm passionate about. And what I'm passionate about is animals and people. So I stopped that very good job and went full-time into dog work, and I've been there ever since. I want to circle back to one thing you said about patience. I decided long ago that patience is the difference between your expectations and reality. So the more you align yourself with reality,
yes,
patience is necessary, because then you're just in the moment with the animal, right? And it's not a matter of patience. I've been doing it long enough that I have faith that the methods I apply will work. And if for some reason they don't, I've got other ones to choose. I think of myself more as a goal-oriented trainer than a method. I'm sort of method and equipment agnostic, but my goal is an animal that is calmer, more confident, more connected. And whatever I can do to get an animal to that, I will use and do. And things.
Yeah, I felt like, it's definitely as a yoga teacher, as a spiritual teacher, whatever, when I was watching you work, I was like, oh, and again, like you might say, I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, but I've always said that this is a spiritual approach to communicating with animals. It's a really powerful thing. And it was like treating the animals with so especially as a vegan, right? Like I have a different take on it. Like I won't even ride horses because I'm not knocking it. I have a lot of friends who are horse people, but I'm like, I can't ask them, do you want this? Like, do you like this? Right. I think humans have inflicted themselves on animals for so long. You can't ask them. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah. One of my friends,
you can ask them. Yeah.
One of my friends is an animal communicator, and she says, like literally, and she says she's a horse person. And she says, one of her horses is like all day, let's go. He loves it. Another one has said to her, I'm done with this. Just leave me alone. Like you can pet me and stuff, but like, I don't want anybody on me. I don't want to do this work anymore. It's been really fascinating learning, but again, it's not a judgment. It's just me. So I just feel like humans have like inflicted themselves on animals for so long. And what I really appreciate about your approach and I am even hesitant to calling it training, because it feels like it's more like revealing to me. That's how I feel about it. It's like
relationship.
Yeah.
100%. You're not training your friends.
Right.
Right. Unless you're in some psych major and you need to define it that way. You're interacting. And for dogs, they have been selected forever to want that bond with us. And I personally think that a lot of the ways what rabbit holes we've gone down, like the clicker food stuff, and I use food, and I'll use clickers in certain situations for very specific reasons, but it doesn't build relationship with the animal.
Mm-hmm.
And the animal craves that connection. So I want to find that part of the animal that craves that connection and then offer them that connection in a non-scary way. And they'll go right to it, like Buck, right to it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'm not going to put a time limit on Buck, because it was clear to me that Buck's experience with people is they ask all kinds of things that I have no idea what they're talking about. And then they get frustrated with me when I don't know. Right? It's like someone comes up to you and goes, blarg, blarg. But I've told her 3 times. Now she's just stubborn. And I'm like, no, she's not stubborn. She has no idea what you're talking about.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what I mean early on with this work is a lens about what you think the world is.
Well, we give everything the meaning, like we give everything the meaning that it has. And to finish my final thing I wanted to say about you is that, well, not my final thing, but that thought, you have such a respect. You have such a respect for them, and you're not there like humanizing them. Like, I can't tell you, I mean, social media as a person who loves animals the way that I do is like insane making for me. And I'm sure for you, like you, I'm just an animal lover, and I have a slight understanding of things. But when I see everything from like people humanizing the animals, oh, they're just being a dick. They're doing it on purpose. She's mad at me. So she's trying to do this. I said, she's not a human. They're not trying to be mean to you or do this to aggravate you. Like, it's so fascinating to me. Number one. Then my final thing is number 2, when people post videos of animals in different situations, like one example of like a dog like constantly chasing its tail, and they're like, oh my God, it's so funny. And I'm like, that is not a dog who is happy or well.
Yeah, exactly.
We
that
just
to me is like showing a video of an autistic child whacking their head on the wall and laughing.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. I've been dying to have you on the show because I cannot tell you people are so, and God bless, I love people and I love animals, but we're so ignorant about how to communicate or what's being communicated to us. And we always put it through our own lens. Humans do this to other humans too. We look at everything through this very limited lens.
Yes, we're living that right now.
Yes.
We're living that right now. So Daisy, who I just adopted, my brand new dog, she's a spinner, and she does it when she's tense. So just yesterday I went down to the basement. She's a little scared of stairs for whatever reason. So she was up there waiting for me patiently, very calm, not whining, very calm. But when I came upstairs, she spun. And that tells me that was tense for her in some way. So I'm figuring out ways to help her make another choice to release that in a different way, or to connect with me rather than spinning. You can't correct stress, right?
I know it? Don't I know it?
Correct stress.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the beating shall continue until morale improves. So I need to help her learn how to make another choice. And it's going to take me many months to peel that layer away, because that is an answer she's clearly had. When I first got her, she could run around the yard at top speed, spinning nonstop as she went. And I just stood there and went, I've never seen that before. So I'm glad you're with me, Pumpkin Pie. And it's going to take us a little while. And I haven't seen her do that. But it's a way of me measuring just how stressful something is for her, because she doesn't necessarily show me in other ways. But yes, we frequently post things that are stressful or I think really disrespectful to animals. I consider them to be sentient beings. We're sentient beings. They're sentient beings. Yes. They do things better than we do in some cases. We do things better than them in some cases. but what I have is an endless curiosity about how their world looks to them and how they see it, and how I can, as I said in my bio, how I can make the world they live in more understandable to them, because this has to make no sense at all. And something that's happening right now, part of that humanizing, is that I tend to think that we define love as that which we perceive we did not get, right? So if you don't perceive that you got enough attention or focus as a child, then you will try to love your dog by giving them endless attention and focus.
Mm-hmm.
And the dog gets really confused by that, and often stressed too. And we would never do that with a friend, right? If we were hanging out, I wouldn't be sitting and going, oh, Karen, you're so cute. You're so cute. You're beautiful. You know, you'd be looking at me going, okay, that's odd, right? That's,
and yeah, and it totally speaks to the person's need. It's
yes.
it's so self-focused. It's so the ego run amok. Like, yes. I'm really showering you with all the love that I wish I had gotten. It's not even about really the dog. I mean, it is, but it isn't, right?
Which creates the situation where the dog or the person which withdraws from you,
yes,
reinforcing your belief that people don't love you, reinforcing your belief that you try harder next time, and around we go. The carousel, the spiritual carousel, around we go. Yeah, anything that happens to you more than 2 or 3 times, you might want to look at your interpretation of what's happening.
Well, I think that's one of the things, right? And you did a really interesting article that I want to talk about, just kind of about this. And you, because I think, how do I say this? I think that I can't tell you, and it makes me sound kind of like a dick, but I'll accept it. It's okay. But like, I'll walk down the street and I'll just see how people are being with their animals.
Yeah.
Now, granted, sometimes somebody's just having a bad day or whatever, but you can usually get a sense of like, oh, and I'll say, Jesus, that person should not have a dog. And there have been times like I've actually yelled out my window at people, and I just think like, because it's so, I don't know how to explain it other than like, I've always been, even as a little kid, injustice has always bothered me. And when I see a voiceless being, and whether it's a little kid or somebody who has more power than somebody else who's bigger than you, or you don't have a voice, being mishandled, mismanaged, abused, bossed around, bullied, like just like, you know, rough, I get like, I can't even tell you the thing that moves through my body. And I'm just like, I always have to make this judgment call, like, is me saying something and doing something going to make the situation worse afterwards? Like, I try to be mindful about it, but it's so painful for me when I see people kind of, again, I say it's almost like why I say daily spiritual practices are so important, the knowing of the self, like the true self, because it's the difference between going out into the world in an inspired state, right, in a love state, versus going out into the world and inflicting yourself and your needs and your wounds on other people. And I see it a lot in parental dynamics, and I see it a lot in human animal dynamics. Absolutely. But one of the things go ahead, please.
No, power allows character. Right? If you're in a power situation, yes, your character will be displayed. It reveals, and it exacerbates. It exacerbates it because it can come out. But what I think when I see that is how lost that person is.
Yes.
Right? At that moment. And we're all lost at some point or another.
Yes.
But that animal may be, despite how crazy it is, in most cases, that can be the longest relationship and the most stable relationship, and the relationship that they love almost more than anything else. And often yes, dogs have a much less complicated relationship with us. And we have, very few of us have any sort of history of betrayal from our pets.
Amazing. So, yes.
Absolute safety. I also think we're coming into our 3rd or 4th generation of human beings raised more by machines than by people.
Yes.
right? I see the videos in the back seat and the phones at the restaurants, and kids spend more time interacting with machines than they do with other human beings. And so the source of that connection that we're wired to have, I believe that source is largely going to pets, which is why it's getting so, the attachments are getting so extreme with the animals, is because that's the source of touch. Our culture has banned adults touching children, right?
Right. I was just having this conversation with somebody 2 hours ago. So yeah, in fact, of course, yes.
Yeah, so we've lost community. We've lost loving touch. And even saying adults touching children, immediately what springs to my mind is dangerous touch, which in fact is a tiny percentage. Yes, absolutely. We need to protect children from that tiny touch that's negative. But you can't do it at the expense of all the positive touch that we are wired critically to need. And how do we raise social loving humans if we don't show them social loving behavior? If we teach them that every stranger danger.
Yeah, my sweetie and I yelled at when Buck, like when something happens in the house, it could just be something like Toby jumping up and surprising him, and Buck's like, and my sweetie starts going, stranger danger, Buck, stranger danger. Like, we think it's so funny. It's like, I feel, look, I could take this like in 5 directions because it's such a rich conversation right now. I was just at my friend's yoga studio. I went and took a class, and we were talking afterwards. And we were talking about, would I go maybe possibly teach a class there and da-da-da. And I was saying, well, here's the thing. I said, I'm a very hands-on teacher. And I know nowadays most teachers are saying like, oh, we're not, we have to be trauma sensitive. We can't always know everybody's history with touch, like da-da-da-da-da. I said, well, first of all, I would always get permission. I always ask permission. But here, and this is what I just said. I said, we live in a world now where unless you live with a partner, an intimate partner, or you're sexually active with other people in some form, most adults, if they live alone or even if they have roommates or whatever, they never get touched. We are a touch deprived society. And that's what I was saying. And
that's the animals. And that's why there are more and more companion animals than there have ever been.
Well, and more and more like people can't fly without their made up. I know so many people that have quote unquote service animals. It's really just you're anxious and you don't like it and you want to come.
Well, you don't want to put your animal underneath, period. You just don't want to put your animal underneath the plane, which I get. But
there's there's this attachment in a way though that like I see it like the way that people, just what you were talking about, that overly enthusiastic, because look, I get it. I mean, animals since I was a little kid, I often say it like this, I have jokingly always said and I'm not the only one who's ever said this, but there's a reason why dog is God spelled backwards, right? For me, in my world, I'm like, animals has always been a super fast pathway to the divine for me. It's very uncomplicated relationship for me. It's like literally the second I see a dog, if I met Daisy, I'd be like, oh my God, I love her. I already love her. I haven't even met her, right? So that's always just been really easy for me. But I know enough now from having smart friends like you, even if I'm really like, oh my God, that is not how I meet the animal. It is not how I approach and interact with the animal. Like,
if you love the animal, now, if you love the animal, you allow them to make the choice, right? I will always stop at a polite distance, just as I would with a human, and ask, hey, bud. And if they come over, then I introduce myself. If they do not come over, I don't go to them because they've already voted, right? They've already said, not right now, for whatever reason. Yes. And I wouldn't do that to a stranger either. If I said hi and they turned away, I wouldn't go up and go, now come on, you're so cute. Right? That would be so rude. So applying some of the same rules we have of social contact with the animals would be a huge step in the right direction. And would keep a lot of people safe, because dogs tell us very clearly, they're very honest, they tell us where they are. And what I would love is for people to learn how to read that and to respect what the animals tell us. If they say not right now, it's not right now. Just as it would be for us. If we said, right now, no, thank you. If the person came and sat next to us and tried to touch us, we would either run away or scream at them. Why are you bothering me? I told you, not now.
Right.
So part of loving the animal is learning to respect them. And part of respecting them is learning their language so that we can interpret it appropriately and be respectful to them.
Yeah, 100%. And I love everything you just said. And two things to play off of that. One is it's like, I grew up I'm curious about this, but I kind of grew up in that generation where even if the creepy uncle or whoever came over, it was like, go give them a kiss. And the little kid's like, no, like, I don't want to. And they're hiding behind their parents' legs and they're like, don't be rude. Go give Auntie Sylvie, whoever. And you're just like, I just see it. I'm like, why are we forcing little beings, whether they're furry or human,
right,
to interact in a way that they're clearly everything, and they're having a full-bodied no.
Yes.
And the parents are insisting, the biggest humans in the room are insisting that they go do this thing.
Right, because we're embarrassed. We're socially embarrassed. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. But if we want kids to have agency,
amen.
Right, and when they say no, we go, okay, got it. Years ago, and I wish people would do this, as a dog trainer, I came up with something I call stop and go with kids. I want kids to be safe, but then why aren't we practicing safe behaviors with them rather than just frightening them of the world? So stop and go is you play this with your neighbors, and you're outside and your neighbor says, do you want to come over for a lemonade? And the child starts to go and your neighbor says, nope, stop. What should you do? And then the child goes to your adult parent, and the parent puts down whatever they're doing, absolutely, immediately, and goes with the child. So you actually get a chance to practice them not being seduced by, I have a puppy, I've got cookies, get in my van, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. That's what we're worried about. That gives them a positive thing to do, something you can reward and cheer them on for making the choice rather than just having a generalized fearfulness. Because I remember one parent telling me they heard their child talking to somebody outside, and they ran outside, and I think it was a delivery person, and she said, I told you not to talk to strangers. And the little boy said, he's not a stranger, he comes here all the time. So generalized fear doesn't prepare the child to make the choice, but practicing something with family and friends, because that's a bigger risk. Family and friends are by far the biggest risk, right? Of the creepy uncle.
Yes, of course.
Much more than somebody.
The stranger.
Yeah, much more.
I mean, almost all of sexual abuse happens from, childhood kind of incest and stuff like that. It all happens within people you know.
Yep.
Not all. I'm just saying.
Not all, but the majority of it.
A large portion of it. And so there's so many things here. So I kind of want to circle back to what you were saying about how so much of this kind of, I want to choose my word right here, but I don't want to say it's misplaced love, but so much of this inability to connect with other humans, because we are so digitized now, we are so electronic now, like getting face to face with people, has become, other than going to work, if you work at a building or whatever, it's become like harder and harder for people. So there's this little bit
and not preference.
So what do you mean? Go.
Sorry, your computers, but not people's preference. I hear a lot of younger people saying, if I can do something that allows me just to go and pick up the rental car or do what I can over the phone and not deal with anybody, I would much prefer that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, because we want speed, we want simplification, and we want it to be easier and stuff like that. And but I just know that nothing replaces face to face. Like that's why I do in-person retreats a couple of times a year. I'm like, let's come out and have a human face to face. We could actually touch each other. Not, you know what I'm saying? Like experience, like get in the room with each other. But one of the things, like I knew that you were on. It kind of blew up this particular article. And I know you were interviewed on, a bunch of big TV shows and things like that for this concept of oxytocin and how, why women love their dogs so much. The chemicals that get released in the brain through this relationship. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. And we just have been talking
Yes.
about that. We're wired to be social. That's what we want to be. We are social animals. And when we connect, when we love, when we, especially with dogs, when we cradle them, look down as we would onto an infant,
Yes.
and we touch them and we stroke them, oxytocin floods our system. And the good news is it floods their system too, which I love, right? I love. It's mutual. But in any case, oxytocin is a big word for the hormone. It makes us feel more confident, more secure. It lessens pain. It makes you more social. It is just one of the really great feel-good hormones.
Mm-hmm.
And my opinion is that is why dogs can do such good work with PTSD and dissociative identity disorder that used to be called multiple personality disorder,
Mm-hmm.
because people can medicate themselves at will with oxytocin when they're stressed, and oxytocin lowers your stress. So right now in the world we're living in,
Mm-hmm.
we all need our animals big time.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make sure that every day, no matter how freaked out we are, that we take time to love them, play with them, to get that hormone going for both of us, but specifically for us. It's one of our ways to really take care of ourselves.
Yes.
And for years, people knew that having a pet caused people to live longer, recover from illness faster. Spouses didn't, by the way. Pets
Right.
did.
Yes.
Right? And I think it's because of the oxytocin that happens. Yes, we're more active, but we don't walk our cats.
Right.
And yet it has a similar thing. So they supply hormonal refuge for us that we can get really nowhere else, and less. The more mechanized we get, the more of a refuge animals are for that deeply primal part of us that needs to be in physical contact with others.
I 100% agree. And there was something that I wanted to just say off of that. So now it's like it just like left
It'll circle
my head.
back.
Yeah. So I think this thing about like what you're saying, you know, touch them, get close to them, like play with them, because they become such. For me, I can't even imagine. Like, you know, we now are down to 6 pets. You know, four
You're
dogs.
cut down.
Well, because one died.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Susie, it's okay. Susie Rabbit, one of our cats, passed away. So we have 4 dogs, a cat, and a bunny, and they're all like hitting this age where I just say we are just going to be a house of grief over here over the next like 5, whatever it is, 3 to 5 years, because they're like, you know, Binky's about tapping into the end of her kind of life. Toby's 13, Buck is hitting 13. They're like, you know, and they're rescues. So they could be 12 and a half, 13, but they're in that area. Quincy's 10. The littles are now 8, which is like, can't even believe
but all your little dogs could go quite a bit farther than 13.
Yeah. So we're like, you know, fingers crossed. But so we're just kind of like preparing for this. And we sometimes think like, okay, when these guys are gone, I asked myself this question: could I ever be for a long period of time? Could I ever be a no dog household? And I'm just like, dude, like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I could do it. And I know people who have no animals because they want the freedom to just travel and do whatever they want to do, and they don't want to think about it. It's so ingrained to me to touch something furry, like at some point throughout the day. And, you know, when I talk about how when I come into the room and Buck starts to get, you know, his little tail starts to wag and he gets like happy. And I'm like, I'm also, hey, P.S., me too. Like, I'm like, it's really kind of hard to have a bad day over here because there's so much love. Like in school.
Because we're wired to resonate with that, right? We see that much excitement and we sync up with that. So one of the things I try to do with my sweetie is when he comes home, I try to greet him at least as well as a dog. Right? I stop what I'm doing. I run to the door and I tell him how glad I am that he's home.
100%. I say, and I've actually said that to people. I said, you know, if we greeted each other the way like our dogs greeted us, and, you know, and I love that quote. It's become a meme now, but it says, you know, I hope to be the person that my dog thinks that I am, or you
Right.
know, believes that I am. And I really genuinely think about that. I'm like, you know, no matter what I do, like they have no concept of my rank in humanity,
No,
right?
they don't care.
They just think she's awesome.
Yes.
She gives us, you know, she gives us treats. And I actually,
No,
but
no.
wait,
Let's talk
that's
about
my next
that.
question.
No, let's talk about that.
That's my next question. People have tried to argue, tried to have the, let's not call it an argument, the discussion with me, the debate with me, that they only love us because we're the ones that feed them. And so we've made them dependent. And now if we stopped giving them treats and snacks and food and stuff like that, they wouldn't want anything to do with us. What do you say to that?
I find it really interesting that somewhere along the way, and really it's the last 15 or 20 years, and I see it partially as a reflection of how little value people put into their worth as a friend. As a friend. And what I would say to that is, when I left my ex, I had to send my horse Nikki to a safe place. It ended up being a place that's a couple of hours from where I am now.
I remember that. I remember that. Mm-hmm.
And about 6 months later, I went to visit him. And the man taking care of him didn't know the kind of relationship I have with my animals. So he said, I put a piece of tape on his mane so you would know which one he was.
Oh my God.
Right?
So
and,
no
right?
disrespect. It's just, yes. Okay.
Right? No, it's like saying, you know, you put a hat on your kid because there are 30 other kids, maybe you won't recognize him. And I was like, okay, he's not going to be ready for what's about to happen. And he said, they're out in 100 acres. We may not even really be able to catch them. And so what we did, we got to the pasture. I climbed up on the gate and I went, hey, Nikki. And a head shoots up from across the field. He's looking away. And I'm like, Nickadiculous. And he starts booking over. And the guy's like, what? I said, we're friends.
Yes.
Right? We're friends.
That just made me emotional. That just like hit my heart.
But it's not transactional.
I know.
If all you do with an animal is give them food, if you make the connection you have with that animal food-based, then yeah, when you stop giving them food, it's like an employer who doesn't really care about you. If all they do is give you money, right? Yeah. Then when they stop giving you money, you will go away.
Exactly.
But that does not define the richness of a friendship.
I agree.
In any way, shape, or form. And it is a sadness to me that so many parts of the dog community of training have gone so far down the Skinner rabbit hole of straight behavior and food that they think that that's what it's about. It's so much more than that. And to have it broken down to, you raise a child and you never hug them, you never say you love them, because that side of my profession says that praise just slows down the learning process.
Which boggles my mind. Like, well, I don't get that at all.
It's all about behavior. They think behavior is relationship, and it's not. Daisy's a great example. Whoever had her did a lot of training with her. She knows behaviors. She did not know how to have a relationship, which is why she was literally spinning out of control. She needs a connection that makes sense to her, that's based on our relationship, not about food, not about a clicker, not about, and those things can be useful.
Sure.
But I've got a problem with them. Now I'm going to go down another rabbit hole. I've got a problem with them because I think that clicking too much can change the brain chemistry of a social animal. Because the whole point of winning, if you're a social animal, is to do what? If you win, what happens? You raise your status. And if all you do is click, then you raise the status, raise the status, raise the status, and you can get an animal that doesn't want to be touched by you, doesn't want to give you attention, right? And so then their lens is that that's what animals are capable of because that's what they inadvertently created.
Mm.
Right? So then they tell you that's all they're capable of. If I didn't give him treats, he wouldn't hang around. And I would say, yeah, but right? That's because you taught the animal that all you were for was a transactional relationship. But that don't make that all they're capable of, just because that's all they
limit them. Yes, right. It's like, this is what I'm talking about. This is why I wish like everybody had, a Sarah Wilson in their life, because I just see, and again, like, look, I love people. I also understand we sometimes know just enough to be dangerous. It's like, oh my God, like, so two things that always come up for me, situationally, like with animals, and I want to talk about one of them, which is, because you said something earlier and it just came back to me when you were talking about little kids and animals. So often I'll be like in an environment, whether it's at somebody's house or like whatever, and I see the way the adults allow the children to handle the animals, whether it's like babies whacking the dog, and I'm always just like, fingers crossed, good dog, good dog, good dog, right? Or they're like holding a cat like a teddy bear and they're dangling, and there are so many situations where I'm like, this is going to leave a mark. Like, this is not going to end well. So is there any advice just for, and I've also seen another situation that hurts me. And again, I'm not judging. I haven't been in the situation, but like, when people replace their dog with a baby, and then it's like, now the dog, like, this is no longer a dog friendly home. It's like all of a sudden there's a new kid in town type of a thing. So again, not to judge, but I see all these things around animals, and I just think like, so when it comes to preparing or teaching your children how to behave with an animal, are there a few tips or whatever that they might not be universal, but they might be helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, we're all on our own journey, and
yes,
and happily dogs adapt to all kinds of stuff very easily.
Yeah.
So my rule with dogs and kids is you don't allow a child to do to a dog anything you would not allow that child to do to a younger child. Right? So you wouldn't let your 6-year-old go up and push or whack on the head when the 3-year-old's asking to be. You would know how to stop it. Mm-hmm. And you would stop it. So often what I see is that things are allowed because it's just not perceived to be a big deal. They think the dog's a good dog, so there's not going to be a problem. And often, bless the dogs, they are incredibly tolerant and patient. Mm-hmm. But I would trust that gut instinct you have inside, and parents have. If you see something, you go, wow, that I would not allow my child to do that to another child, then that's probably not an okay thing to allow the child to do the dog. And also to respect the dog's statement. So your child's doing something, the dog gets up and moves, your dog has just said, I don't like this, mm-hmm. Right? If the child then pursues the dog and continues, the dog may snap because the dog's already said, I don't like this. And now we've left them no other option. So one of the things I try to think about is, if I notice the dog saying, no, thank you, I'm going to intervene, because I don't want the dog to go to the next level of no, thank you. They've already said it once or twice or 3 times. I want to stop it there. So watch for your dog turning away, moving away, turning their back on the child, all kinds of ways that if you saw an adult doing this with a child, you'd go, wow, that adult doesn't want to interact right now, right? Not interested. And dogs are great, and a lot of them will be patient way beyond anything we would do as human beings. We would snap at the child long before that, but you can't guarantee that. And I want my dogs to know that I will come in on their behalf.
You would advocate for them, for sure.
Advocate for them. So I remember years ago, one of my shepherds was curled up on the couch, because I do not have a problem with that myself. And somebody went up and grabbed her by the face and like, ooh, boo, 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 boo. And she sat there and she rolled her eyes at me like, are you going to do something about this? And I'm like, baby, I'm on my way. I'm on my way. I see it. Thank you so much for looking at me first. I'll take care of this for you.
Yes.
Yeah. When the dog knows that you're a team, you can get that little extra time to intervene because they will refer to you first and say, is this okay? And I'll go, nope, I'm on it.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
I used to have to, Abby was such a pretty dog.
Yes.
And she'd be in the car and I took her with me everywhere. And especially as she got older and she couldn't see as good and she was picky. Abby was picky about who she was pals with. And the way the relationship always started, I'd say, please just don't go up to her and like stick your foot. I'm like, approach her with a ball, throw the ball. You will be friends for life. That's the condition. Like we got to establish a little relationship here. But so many people would like, you go to the park.
You're right.
You'd be in the car and I'd get out first and a friend would see her and they'd be like, oh, and they'd go to stick their hand in and she'd, and they'd be like, ooh. And I'm like, dude, you just totally invaded her space. She didn't know you were coming in, like whatever. And so it's one of these things where we love it. We love dogs so much. We want to get close to them and we don't consider, like you said, like I remember I just learned this thing about Montessori floor beds. All right. I'm not a parent. I'm like, Montessori schools. What the hell is a Montessori floor bed? So I Google it because I'm curious about everything. And I realized they say, well, a Montessori floor bed, what they encourage parents to do is get down on the floor, like lay on your back, roll on your stomach, look around, see how the world looks to you through the lens of a child's eyes, like the height of things, where things are. And I thought, this is genius. And I'm like, people should do this for their dogs once in a while. Like, what's it like to see from their height and their lens?
Oh, and the more you love the animal, the more you want to be polite and respectful. So one of my sayings is the smaller the space, the higher the stakes. Cars, elevators, corners, underneath furniture. You reach in at a dog, they are more likely to be defensive. And can you imagine if you're sitting in the car, la, 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 and someone spots you and goes, oh, she's adorable, and runs to the car and reaches in at you. You would freak out, right? But somehow we've thought that dogs should know that we come in with good intentions. But if you really have good intentions, then you have to ask the dog.
Well,
you have to ask the dog.
So this is where I have to get a little better because I fully admit I see fuzzy and some other part of me goes like, oh. And so my friends tell this story where they laugh. Like I booked across the street, but I went up and I was like, friendly? Can I pet? Like, and she was like, and I was like, and I'm like, okay, I have to get better at my own boundaries because I get really excited. But I will say, I'm really good at asking. Like if somebody's holding and it's a tiny little Pomeranian or something, it's like, I get a little crazy, but I'm really good at going, is your dog friendly? Can I approach? Like, and I still know, I squat down. I try to be smart.
Always let the dog do the last 2 feet.
Come to you.
You approach, I stop, I ask, hi, bud. If he doesn't come over, then you just admire him from afar.
Let it go.
Let it go, right? Because if you really love the animal,
yes,
then you take their word for it.
Well, and here's a little note to self and note to anybody else who might be listening. It's not about getting your need met, right? Like in that moment, if we're letting them truly decide,
yes.
And if we were, like you're saying, if we love them and respect them, they get to decide if they want to come into our space.
And it's not personal. Don't take it personally.
Exactly.
It is not personal. You don't know what kind of day they've had or what their history is or any of that stuff.
I love that.
So just like nobody knows ours. So the way to love an animal is to be respectful of that animal. Years ago, I went down to the Galapagos. And I was lucky enough to go snorkeling. And this will tie in. Anybody who knows me knows that eventually these rabbit holes tie in. So give me a second. And everybody in the boat went left. So I went right because that's my nature. Um, and I was swimming along, snorkel fins, and 2 sea lions came down. And we then played for an hour and a half.
Oh my God.
And why did we play? Because they could come right up to my mask and look, and I would never be so rude as to attempt to touch a wild animal. Therefore, they got really comfortable with me. And I would put my fins out of the water. They would put their tail out of the water. They would spin around me. One would hang in the water. The other one would come up and wrap his fins around his buddy and they'd look at me like, what the heck is she? And I had the world's best time. But when you come from a place of respect, you actually allow the animals to offer you more of themselves. If you intrude on them, you will get a cursory at best, just like if you intruded on a person. If I ran up and went, you're so cute, right? You'd be like, hi, now go away. You know,
Yeah,
when
it's freaking me out right now.
I'm not going to bite her, but yeah, I don't like her. But if you actually let them know, I'm going to be respectful of you, then they can reveal themselves to you. And you get a chance to actually get to know more about who they are, which is endlessly interesting to me anyway. I'm always curious.
Yeah, me too. I have so many feelings about so much of what you just said. And again, I want to be clear. I'm not like judging my brothers and sisters so much as I'm reflecting back like behaviors that I see and have been guilty, you know, and I don't even like to use the word. I won't even say I've been guilty of. It's that I didn't know better. I didn't know better at the time. Right. And so
good old Oprah, when we know better, we do better.
Yeah. And that's why one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is I have such a love for dogs. And I'm like, okay, what's one of the ways I can be more helpful in the world? I'm like, oh, if I can even get like however many ears like this lands in, the hearts and the heads and the homes that this lands in, I think it'll be really, really helpful because it's painful for me. It's like, especially as a vegan who chooses not to eat animals or wear animals and all the byproducts and stuff like that. And, you know,
well, you don't cause pandemics now, do you?
You know,
no pandemic was ever started by a vegan.
No, the annoying
don't blame us.
The annoying vegans. But it's like when I see like people are like, oh, I'm going on this trip to like swim with the dolphins or I'm going to do this thing and they can't wait. And it's so, I always want to say to them, like, if you like on some level, I'm not saying this about dogs, but on some level, if we really love them, we would kind of just leave them alone. Like we wouldn't be up in their face and wanting to touch them and do all these things. And I sometimes get like, I do, for whatever reason, I feel so protective of my animal brothers and sisters, and I want to advocate for them in so many ways because we don't know. Like, even if we have nothing but good intentions and we're just curious and we're excited, and it's how I kind of feel, you know, about like zoos and aquariums and stuff like that, because I think, like I hear parents say, well, I take my kids to the zoo because I want them to know these animals and love them. And I'm like, well, they're not behaving like themselves.
No.
Wait. So I'm not 100% like anti, because I know that there are some programs where they're keeping the species alive through their reproductive programs. And there's also places that are rehabilitate them. So I'm not going across the board saying they're all evil. What I'm saying is though, is I think that I just wish we would think a lot more about the situations we're putting our animals in when they don't have a choice. And then if they're already like encaged and we're like slamming our faces up against the windows and knocking on them and doing all these things, I just think like, oh my God, they must be so stressed. However,
well, you will know if they're stressed.
I'm bringing it up because I want to know what you think.
Well, I think that our species cares about things they've experienced in general.
Yep.
So if people get to fall in love with different species or become aware of, that is an educational thing. If it's too distant, if you never get that experience of seeing how big a polar bear is, you know, right there, and have that wonder,
yes,
we may not be motivated to make other change. So I think we're, as a species, many of us are very separated from nature.
Yes.
The more separated we are from nature, the less we think about her and the less we'll act on her behalf.
Yes.
So whatever we can do to engage more and more people in the natural world, I think is in the long run better for the world as a whole. So that's where I am at that. And I think lots and lots of zoos are making a huge effort for their animals to be relaxed, and you can see when they're stressed because they start to do repetitive behaviors, right?
Yes.
And zoos hate that. They really try. They do a lot of enrichment now trying to stop that kind of repetitive behavior. And that used to be standard. And now
I remember from when I was a kid.
Yeah, right. Everything would just pace back and forth.
Yes.
Right. Just pace back and forth. And that is not what's going on in a lot of zoological parks now. They're just not. But I know that people feel passionate about it in many different directions.
Yes.
For me, it's, if we don't meet nature, why will we protect nature?
So having a more, like you're saying, this identifiable thing where we can connect and have the moment. For me, it's like, and I understand, like, again, one of my favorite things to do as a kid was the Stoneham Zoo, like in Massachusetts. And I was like, being up close with an animal, it was like so amazing to me. And it wasn't until later, like, you know, like we would sometimes come to like New Hampshire, and there was like this, I can't even remember it was like a trading post, and they had these bears, like and when I look back now, it like, it crushes me. It like breaks my heart when I understand the reality of what these animals were probably dealing with. And
yeah, that sort of thing, not okay.
Yes. And so, yeah. And it's like, why, like, you know, like SeaWorld, when you see like these poor animals, like, you know, I just think like, oh my God. So, and I have a friend who, well, I wouldn't say we're friends, we're friendly. We know of each other, Cy Montgomery, and she's written a bunch of books, but she wrote a book called Soul of the Octopus. And that's what she does. She goes into the natural world, and then she comes back and she reports, and it's like, you can't help but fall in love with octopus after reading that book. You're just like, oh my God.
Smart. They're so smart. They're crazy smart.
They are so smart. And it's so incredible. And okay, so while we're so two final things. One of them, we were both kind of chuckling at this, because for me, I just try to think about like, what are the things that like light up besides like my love for animals and what a difference they've made in the world. But let's dive into retractable leashes. And why I hate them is, it doesn't matter why I hate them, but you are the expert here. So talk to us, educate us a little bit on retractable leashes. And for those of you who are like, what's a retractable leash? It's those ones that have like the little handle grip, and then they stretch out to different distances, right?
It's what people use when you hear, he's friendly, and you hear zzz coming your way. All right, here's my problem with retractable leashes. They're sold at the store as if it's just a leash, right? You just go pick it up. It's a leash. Now my dog has more running room. That's fantastic. What they don't tell you is, if you go to the website, last time I looked, I haven't looked recently, there is more wording about the dangers of those leashes on the website than there are about chainsaws and handguns. I know multiple people who have been sent to the hospital because their dog, and these were dog trainers, the dog ran around their legs and took off, and that leash cut into their flesh deeply. I know of people where they grabbed the leash, or the leash wrapped around, they've lost fingers. The leash breaks, it retracts back into their face. It is such a hazard. A dear friend of mine's son, he was going biking. He was a competitive biker. He comes around the corner. The dog was on the other side of the road on a retractable leash, and he ended up down the side, broken collarbone, broken arm. Just really dislike them. Really dislike their use around children, because kids and dogs and retractable leashes is a great way for someone to get hurt. Mm-hmm. The only time I will use them is if I take an untrained dog to a field and I'm the one handling it, and I know there's nobody around that I can harm. Because I've known dogs that were hit by cars because the person was walking on one side of the fence, the dog scooted under and ran into the street after something, and they just couldn't lock it fast enough.
Oh God.
So it's a much more tricky tool and dangerous tool, and should not, in my opinion, be used on streets and sidewalks. I walk the dog on a regular leash to the park where there's a big field, and then I'll run the dog around, then I put him on the regular leash, bring him home. So anyway, yes.
Yeah, because they can be. And I think that's it, right? Because they're just sold like, oh, it's just like a leash, like any other leash. And we think
Just
like,
gives them more freedom.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And we don't realize, like, I've seen the pictures, the burns, like this, like I mean, I've seen the stuff and I'm just like, that is not soothing. But I've also seen, in my very unexpert opinion, it just makes it, you don't have as much, for lack of a better word, control or handling ability if there's an incident or something happens.
Yep.
You can't get that dog back to you as quickly as you might need to.
Yep. And my thing is, when you're walking a dog, no matter how long the leash is, you're still walking the same pace.
Right.
Right? I mean, whether they're 4 feet ahead of you or 15 feet ahead of you, you're still walking the same pace, the same distance. And we don't need them with that 15 or 20 feet being able to go onto the road or get in front. So not safe for most people. A trainer I know has a huge drawer full of retractables, and whenever a client comes in, she says, "You do not have a license to retract." I will give this back to you when you have earned it back. So she just has,
oh my God,
deep. And the retractable leash sites will say, "Do not use on untrained dogs." And I always think, they're only used on untrained dogs.
I would say do not use on untrained humans. That's what I would say.
Well, it's just, and people have no idea. They just want the dog to have freedom and to have some fun, and they feel like they're cooped up. And I hear them. But because none of us read the packaging or go to the website, they're unaware of the risk that's possible. Yeah. So the more people that are aware of the risk, use the regular leash, go to a big park or playground, let the dog run around where it's just you. Do not have this leash and your dog and a child around. Makes me really nervous. And then put them on a leash and walk them home. And then you can have some freedom and you can have safety.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's great. And I think one of my final questions, then I'm going to let you riff if there's any final things.
Excellent. Can't wait.
Yeah, no, that you want to talk about. But I know a bunch of different people who are in the quote unquote dog training world. And I'm always fascinated by and I just know because things that they post and write that from what I understand, now correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not in that world, but dog trainers can be so brutal to each other about the quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes, people at home, if you're not watching, like the right way.
Yes.
Kind of attack each other and tear each other's methodologies down. And people are like, oh, the dog whisperer Caesar and his sit and he was the worst thing that ever happened to dogs. And other people are like, oh my God, he's amazing. Everybody's got opinions.
Yep.
So is there anything, if you are going to kind of say anything about the industry, or let me put it this way, if there was something that you would like to see more of or less of or whatever, is there anything off the top of your head? And again, not asking you to tear other people down or judge them, but is there anything that you wish that there was a little bit more of something?
One of the funny t-shirts out there is, the only thing 2 dog trainers can agree on is what the third one's doing wrong.
You have a common enemy, right? Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
So it's a brutal industry, and it does amuse me, the people who are, air quotes, all positive, who are brutal to other human beings. Because I think if all positive is really the best way to interact with any being, then you need to live it. You need to live it. You can't tell me this hypothetically and then attack other people from where they are on their journey, right? So the only thing I would say is, for all the people out there who love their animals, find a trainer that at the end of the session, your dog is calmer, more confident, and more connected to you. If the dog is those 3 things, then that trainer works with that dog. If your dog is not those three things, if they're more distracted, if they're totally worked up, if their tail is down, if their head is down, if they're more fearful, then that methodology doesn't work, or how that methodology is being applied doesn't work. So I do not care what all the conversation is between trainers. I care about the results with the animal. And if the animal's better off for our methods, then I use those methods. And if they're not, then I don't. And that's all I care about. The rest of it, you can't keep up with it.
So let your dog inform you of the
Yes.
experience they're having.
Yes. Yes. Right. And what I've seen, too many treats and not enough relationship work, and the dog can get socially hard. They won't wag their tail at you anymore. You talk to them and they just look at you like, yo, where's the treat? Then you've gone too far down the treat zone. If the dog looks at you and starts to get stressed or looks unsure, or like my little Daisy spins or gets some other stress response, then they don't understand and they feel pressured. So too much pressure is being added before the animal understands why. And that's very common. We as humans, we have a big tendency, if a little doesn't work, let's just do it louder or stronger.
Oh my God, it's so true.
Right? True for yoga too, right? Yeah, we'll just force you into position because that's the point, right? I'll do yoga right. Well, if you're worried about doing yoga right, you're probably not doing yoga yet.
Exactly.
So, so just read the dog. If they're not doing it, it's because they're confused. Period. Dogs do what they understand. And you could say, yeah, but I've been training them forever. And I'd say, it doesn't matter how long you've been training them. If the dog doesn't understand, they don't understand. And you doing it for another month in a way they don't understand
doesn't help them.
Doesn't help, right? Doesn't make it any better for the dog. So just assume the dog's confused and try to figure out a way to unconfuse them. And I am not anti-food and I'm not anti-clicker, but I'm anti the use of it to the point where the animal now becomes transactional with you.
Yes.
And like, don't pet me. Don't, come on, let's go. And I think now we've lost the dog in the dog. We've made them into something else.
Yes, I can totally see how that can happen 100%. I want to give you a chance to just, if there's anything else that you want to say, I want you to be able to just no, but there's like anything in particular around our relationship with dogs, and just one of the ways that we can make our relationships better, but I'm trying to think, there was one other thing that you had just said, and I was like, oh, I wanted to ask you about this. So I'm just going to give me 1 second here.
That's fine. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, I think I was curious about breeds. When people have these expectations, and whether they're positive or negative around, like, well, this is a border collie, I'll never forget, somebody came up to me one time and they saw Abby, and they saw us interacting, how smart she was. And they said to me, so do you have a farm? Do you have some sheep? And I was like, no. And they said, it's cruel of you. It's cruel of you to have a working dog that doesn't get to work. She was born to do this. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, this dog wants, I'm thinking in my head, this dog wants for nothing. I'm like, I throw her that ball. I'm like, the balls are her sheep, basically.
Right.
I let her herd the balls around the yard, like the whole thing. And I just remember feeling like, oh my God. And like how it, like, for a half a second, I was just like, oh, am I being a bad dog mom to Abby? Like, oh my God. And I felt so bad. And it's just like how I see, like, and I have friends who are very nature loving. Right? They're hikers. They love the wilderness. They snowshoe. They do all this stuff. And they'll be like, I always get conflicted, Sarah. I guess this is where I'm coming from with the breed thing. When they're like, well, this particular breed of dogs, like, they were bred to do sled dog running. Like, they live for this. They want to be out in those conditions. They want to be pulling a sled. And I'm always like, but how do we know? Like, do they? Like, is this a humane thing to still be doing? Or like just how we characterize, because just like dogs, I look at dogs like I look at people as individuals. So I'm just
but
if you have any thought? No, honestly, I'm trying
yes.
to learn. Do you have any thoughts about this?
Yes, I do.
Great.
If behavior was not genetically controllable, we would not have created 400 plus breeds to do different things, right?
Yes.
So dogs can absolutely light up like a Christmas tree when they are given the opportunity to do what they were created by us to do.
In their DNA, like they feel it, like,
oh yeah, no, that their world makes sense when they are doing that work. Now, of course, not always every dog in a certain breed, it's not across the board, but is behavior genetically transferable? Absolutely, without a question, yes, it is, or we would not have created the breeds to do what they're good at. Now, that does not mean that your dog will be miserable if you don't sled or herd or go ratting or whatever. Right? I mean, dogs are they love our companionship mostly above all other things. But dogs can very much love to do what they were,
quote unquote, bred
to do. However, there's always the extreme of that where the animal is then used as a tool.
Yes.
Rather than, right? So it's always easy at almost everything to find the extremes where the black and white areas are easy to locate.
Yes.
The gray areas are the tougher places.
Yes.
So you put a husky in a house where they're not getting walked and they're not getting, the exercise they crave. And that's an easy end to go, that's not right for that dog. And then you have the people that are racing their dogs 200 miles, nonstop. And you think, okay, you got to think about that.
Right.
Then everything in between where people are walking or ski joring or biking and doing stuff that their dog loves, going hiking, then yeah, that dog's needs are being met. And how do we know their needs are being met? Because they're not neurotic.
Right. Because they're happy.
Because they're happy. Abby was happy. Therefore, her needs were being met. Maybe not in the way he thought they should be met.
Yes.
But her need. So if a dog's not neurotic, I got no issue. If a dog's displaying signs of stress on some level or another, then we need to make some change so that their world makes more sense to them. Yeah. That doesn't mean you have to go get, a flock of sheep.
Well, I remember when we first got Abby and we brought her home, and I'd never had a border collie before. And the first time she saw a ball, she got into this position.
Yeah.
You know the position, right? She dropped. I mean, she's
movement.
A puppy. She's 10 years old.
No, it's in there.
This position. I'd never seen a more focused dog in my life, and I was like, oh my God, this is genetic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's genetic.
Already knew how to do what she did, and
oh yeah,
it was she wasn't a human, obviously, but I could literally say very particular things to Abby.
Oh, yeah.
She would just go off and do it and come back. And I was like, how is it?
Because these animals were our people's critical farming and ranching partners. Yes. They're absolutely equal partners.
Yes.
I remember I had sheep for a while and I had shepherds, and my barn was closed off and there was a pasture that the dogs were not allowed to go into unless I invited them in. And I was doing something with the sheep, and at the time I was not winning. The sheep had an opinion, I had an opinion, and the sheep was clearly more qualified at that moment. And after I'd been slammed against the stall for a while, all of a sudden my older shepherd female, Julia, she just looks around the corner at me and she had broken 2 big rules, right? Don't come into the pasture. And she's like, do you want my help? And I'm like, thank you, doll. Right. Thank you. And so she had to make the decision that whatever she heard going on the barn overrode the other rules that we had. And that's what these animals do. They're unbelievably intuitive. And I remember one of my dogs, if they went into the flock after I worked them, and some sheep was a little difficult the day before, they would go in and sort of nose bump the one that had been difficult the day before, because they're like, I'm on to you. Don't even start with me. So they're working at such a level. I love the herding dogs, because a good border collie has to take the handler's instruction and then put it through what they know about the flock. And so if you're trying to get the flock to go left and the flock's favorite field is to the right, that dog is going to orient more to the right so the sheep don't run while they're moving them left. So yes, they have the ability to take your instruction and work it through. And that's one of the wonderful things about really seeing working dogs doing what they're good at.
Yes.
Get to see them as truly independent, thinking, problem solving, right? Not these little fluff balls that exist just for us to love, which is lovely, but is so much more than that.
Yes. Yes. I can't even, all I could say is that it was a revelation having a border collie, and it was miraculous. And I was constantly amazed. I was just like, oh my God. And she was the most loyal. Like I said, I'll start crying if I talk too much about her, but she was just like the best. And so one of the things that, and I will say this, so when we first got her, we had a big yard. And then that relationship ended, and I was forced to move for like 6 to 7 months into this little apartment. Abby, who was the most well-behaved dog, proceeded to chew
her
bottoms of all my chairs. And I literally was like, I ended up buying a house.
With a yard.
Abby, because I was like, she needs a yard. Like we need to be, these walks on the city streets aren't cutting it. No. And so I ended up, buying this little house, and I was like, it's for her, because I could clearly see she was stressed and unhappy.
Oh yeah. And how many of us have bought houses, cars, right? Trips, chosen spouses, by what works for our animals.
Okay. First of all, you just hit on something that, again, I'm just outing myself in so many ways on this episode, but and I understand, let me say this, let me preamble this, that I understand that a lot of people don't like dogs or love dogs, either because there was an incident or they haven't had experience with them. But some part of me, I always think like, I don't think I could be with somebody who didn't like dogs. Like that to me is like, I'm like, that would be so I'm like, I'm a little suspicious when people don't like dogs. And I know, I'm like, what's that about? And then I'm like, maybe they got bit, or maybe they don't know. But when people are just like, I don't like dogs, I'm just like, what's up with that? Like, I don't even know.
I think there's probably also genetic propensity in people. I think there were advantages. Oh, sure. Advantages to the animal bond. And I think some people just don't have that. They don't get the oxytocin loop. If you get the oxytocin loop from animals, then you're drawn to animals. But if the oxytocin fires for people but doesn't fire for animals, then you look at it and go, why would people spend time? So I suspect they're genetic differences.
All right. I love that insight. Thank you for that. The final thing I want to say, just because it makes me so happy. One of the things that I just think, God bless dogs. Thank the universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it, for dogs. The work that they're doing now, having little courtroom dogs for kids that have to go, like,
can you imagine,
testify against their abusers and stuff like that. Like, what a gift. What a gift these animals are to us.
Yes. They do stuff that we cannot do for ourselves. I trained a little dog for a wonderful friend of mine, client, who suffers with dissociative identity disorder. And with him in her life, she can function in ways she never could. Even with people by her side, it's just different. They do stuff for us that we cannot do for ourselves, and we need them.
They're like a superpower in so many ways. You know, they're like so a couple of things. I want you to tell people, because I know people are going to hear this, and I'm like, everybody's going to want to be like, Sarah, can you help me with my dog? So I want to be really clear about the role, how you work with people or animals at this point in your career, because you're kind of a big deal. And then I'm going to definitely put below how people can find you on social media and your school and stuff like that. So, and then my other final question before you do that is, do you train trainers ever? Do you have courses where you work with trainers who might want to learn more how to relate and lead the way?
I've always thought about doing that, and I just never have gotten around to it. I've gone around and lectured to trainers forever.
Yes.
And then I just you know, my life changed and I've got
Yes.
this wonderful new world here and my sweetie, and I'm just not in the mood to travel anymore. I like it here.
I wish people
Uh,
could. I bet I'm gonna say this because when the spiritual team comes in hot, I can't
right.
help but report. So take it or leave it.
Oh,
I guarantee you, Sarah, that if you were to set up something in your hometown and let them come to you, that you would be amazed. If you made it easy for you and just, as Mary Oliver says, just let the soft animal body of yours love what it loves, right? And if you love being at home, and that's what I do, like I keep my retreats in New Hampshire, so I don't have to go very far. So for me, it's like I would probably come to
yeah,
one of those retreats just to learn, because
right.
I think that if animals are continue to be as
Vital.
yes, necessary was I was going to say in our lives the way that they are. I want us to understand them and interact with them and respect them and love them. And we need
Yes.
more of you in
Thank
the
you.
world. I really genuinely mean that. And so I just think it would be amazing. So
Thank you.
you can
Good
sleep on it.
encouragement.
Yes. But so how do you work with people now? Because I know you have helped celebrities. Like you take their
Yes.
dogs for a while and you do all kinds of stuff, but I don't want to misspeak. So how can people know more about you, work with you? What do you do?
Yeah. I'm in St. Louis and I help people locally. And I also work internationally through Zoom or Skype to help people with their animals that are having trouble. So I can do that. It depends on the issue,
Yes.
but I can assist with quite a few issues just the way we're doing here. So I'm happy to talk to people about that. And you can find me through My Smart Puppy almost anywhere. My
So it's,
Smart Puppy, almost anywhere. You can also look me up on Wikipedia if you want to.
yeah, if you want to like read all her long bio. So mysmartpuppy.com is your website. Is there
Yep.
also a website for the school you said? Is it
My Smart Puppy School sends you to a few courses that I've put up.
Okay.
So reading body language, why women love dogs, that's all there at very reasonable pricing so that people can participate. And my Twitter is My Smart Puppy, and on Facebook, My Smart Puppy page. Straight My Smart Puppy gets you to my personal page. You're welcome to go there.
Yes.
I'm happy to chat with anybody. Very
Yeah,
happy.
you guys, she has a lot of resources out there. So if you check out her website too, there's a lot of resources and her books. Like anytime somebody that I know gets a puppy, I say, go get the book.
My
My
Smart
Smart
Puppy is
Puppy.
my favorite. Yep, My Smart Puppy.
Go get the book, My Smart Puppy. It was so funny. I was telling you at one point that when I bought my first kennel for Abby,
Mm-hmm.
there was a book that came with the kennel and it was My Smart Puppy. And so it was so funny. Like, I don't even know how that arrangement happened, but years later, when I finally met you, I was like, you're the lady
Yes.
book. Like I was so fascinated. I thought it was incredible, but you have been such a gift. I have no doubt. I know what a gift you've been in our life, helping us to
Good.
understand our furry kids more. And what I just know what a gift you have been to all of your clients. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful that somebody with not just your love, but your wisdom and your character. And the like I said, you are to me a spiritual dog trainer and a dog expert, and I'm just so grateful for you, and I'm so grateful for having you on the show. So thank you for saying yes.
Oh, are you kidding? This has been a blast. I don't get a chance to really dive in the way we got to dive in. And I thank you for that opportunity because I love to talk about it and I don't get a lot of chance to talk like this.
Oh
So
yeah, and I hope look, I would have kept going, but I'm like I already took up 90 minutes of her day. I could talk to you for hours and hours. There's so much there, and because I like to learn too, because I almost always I always say it like this, and again I'm outing myself, but like if you were to put like puppy or baby in front of me, I'm like 99% of the time I'm going puppy. So I
right.
tend to become very like animal focused. Of course, it's why I'm a vegan. It's why I am what I am. But you do a really great job, I think, of reserving judgment and balancing, like taking into account not just the animal that's in front of you, but the human too that's in front of you. And I can do this really well.
Absolutely.
I can do it really well when people like in spiritual mentoring and yoga and teaching
Right.
and stuff like that. As soon as an animal gets involved, I get a little like, so
It's harder.
yeah, you're a great teacher for me to always try to take in the whole of what's happening. And you were very helpful for me with that too. And practicing compassion towards myself
Yes.
for not knowing how to fix what was happening. Because I grew up in the generation, and I know we're going over a little bit, I grew up in the generation, to this day it still haunts me, where like, you know, my stepfather, you know, my dad was the one, like if the dog made a mistake on the carpet, pooped or peed on the carpet, could have
They
been
rub their
hours
face in it.
before, they got whacked and they got their face shoved
Yeah.
in it. And I could always, even as a little kid, I could always see the confusion in the dog's face. Like they didn't, I'm like, I don't think they know that this was for the thing before.
Listen,
Like,
I was raised in that time period too. So that's one of the reasons that I don't have judgment of people, because I've gone a long distance with my own development, and we are just where we are. And I always adored the animal, but I was following the instructions that I was given,
yes.
you know, and when we know better, we do better. And that's all it is. So no, I am not judgy towards people because I have a memory.
Yes. It's like, you know, there's a preacher in LA. His name is, he does a lot of things. He's a life coach. He's a speaker. He's an actor, Tim Story. And he says this great phrase, which I love. And he says, you know, basically along the journey, sometimes you just have to kind of let people suck for a little while, right? Like we're going to be, I would say we're going to be clumsy at certain times, and we didn't know better. Like, so I'm just so grateful that we have somebody who, really cared enough and was curious enough to pay attention, to be present. Because I think to myself, how is it that maybe you have a natural propensity, right? But how are you able to decipher that body language? How did you learn? And I'm like, it's because she has spent thousands of hours paying attention. And one of the greatest ways that we show love is to be present and to pay attention. So just thank you for your willingness to do that, and to report back from the field what you've discovered. It's a beautiful thing.
And my goal is to share it so that people can stand on my shoulders and get to the next level of understanding from here. We shouldn't always have to remake the wheel for each other. We should be there boosting each other up and saying, what's it look like for you up there? And tell me, you know, take this stuff, go out and come back and tell me so I can get to the next place.
And that's why I want you to train trainers, because I see a lot of this churning and like this, like combative. And I'm like, why don't we all, like, everybody just report from the field? This is what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? And then finding a way. And I'm not saying like your way is the only way. It's just a way that I'm wicked familiar with. But I can tell you that your way, compared to the other ways, because I've worked with other trainers, I was like, oh, this feels really good.
Right. For both of you.
Exactly.
Right. Bucky lit up. Bucky's like, I'm in. This is great. And then you're getting more connection from him. And he says, oh, I can have connection? That's fantastic. And then you say, oh, look, he's connecting. And then it all snowballs in the right way. But yes, we apply our lens. If it's combat, it's combat. If it's I'm not worth connecting with, I've got to pay someone to be my friend, or I've got to feed the dog to have a relationship with me, because they'll never work for me just for me, because I'm not that valuable a human being. I think it's a self-esteem thing. That I'm like, no. You can have so much with your animal. You can't imagine how much more is available to you with your animal than transaction.
All right. Yes, that's beautiful. And I'm so sorry to tell you that I have one final question. Go
for it.
Because I have so many, and us too, when, especially if you have more than one animal, let's say, and let's say they may have only known each other a year, or for in our case, 6, 7, 8 years. When an animal dies in a pack, when there's no longer that element, so many people will say to me, like, either I think my dog's depressed. Is there any kind of just general words that you can say to people? Like, if you have like 2 dogs and one passes away, or a cat and whatever, like, how do animals grieve? It seems to me that they notice that something's different. But so like, what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. It depends on the animal. because like when my shepherd I mentioned before passed away, the dog that she always looked at sideways was so happy. She would have tap danced on the grave. She's like, my day just got better. I don't care where she's gone, right? She's just not here. But I've had other animals where they were really tight. And of course, when their friend goes, they are off kilter for a while. And also sometimes when we're grieving hard, our animals sort of get quieter because they see that we're upset, and then we project onto them, see, they're really upset. And I'm like, well, it might be that you're really upset. But either way, you do the things your dog loves. You give them more structured interaction. So you do stuff together where you're leading and they're following, because that often helps them feel like their world makes sense. And let them have some time. They'll get there.
Because sometimes the compulsion is to immediately go out and like replace, like fill the void, right? And I'm not saying it's bad, because it's like, no, yeah. I think you have to know, because like you said, you kind of have to know the animal, know the animal,
know yourself. Sometimes the animals pass and I immediately get another animal, and Pip passed in September, I think.
Yes.
And I didn't get Daisy until last month.
Yeah. Well, and in the meantime, you fostered kittens, and I was so jealous. I was like, oh my God.
They were the cutest. Adorable. I want to do it again, but I have to give Daisy some more time to settle in.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. It was such a pleasure. I appreciate you. I love you. I celebrate you. I can't wait. I can't wait for this episode to go out.
All right. Good to see you.
Thank you, honey.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Karen Kenney Show. I super duper appreciate your time, friendship, and support. And look, if something that I shared from my heart today somehow landed in yours, I'd love to hear about it. So please tag me on Facebook or Instagram or IG stories or wherever the cool kids are hanging out these days, and let me know what your favorite part was or what you found most helpful. You can find me over at Karen Kenney Live. That's Karen, KENNEYLIVE. And if you're digging what I'm saying and you want to hear more, I'd be wicked grateful if you could go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, because you guys, that's how you'll help me to keep spreading the love. And if you can think of someone that could benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with them. I'd also love to stay connected with you. So if the feeling is mutual, please go to KarenKenney.com/freebie and download my free guide to building your spiritual team. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, keep living in the fearless flow. Know that I see you, I appreciate you, and I love you. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing.